I showed you yesterday how the obsession with identity politics and racism at our universities has come back to bite them on the bum. Our unis are being unfairly targeted by China, sure, with warnings for Chinese students to reassess study in Australia because of anti-Asian racism. Now, we know there are other forces at play here, other reasons China is trying to hurt us. But as I showed you last night, our universities have given Beijing and other critics plenty of ammunition because they constantly focus on identity issues, race and racism, and endlessly look for ways to play up any racism they can find. Remember this article published in the university journal The Conversation last month, saying recession and racism go together. It was written by Monash University's Susan Carland, and she went on to say that in Australia, the historical precedents of recession racism link, coupled with our current struggles with race issues, means our nation is primed for strife. Hard for our unis to complain about China's barbs, about racism, when we print that sort of stuff, isn't it? And they talk it up so much. This is why the culture wars are important. This is why it's vital to keep defending our institutions, our history, our values, because there are others always, both inside this country and outside it, who are willing to chip away at everything that makes our liberal democracy a great success. Look at what's happening around the world, where the rightful efforts to eliminate racial discrimination have been hijacked by extremists who want to eliminate police forces, attack history and institutions, and tear down the statues of historic figures because they were associated with appalling practices like slavery and the exploitation of Indigenous peoples that sadly were commonplace at that time. In the US, the focus has been on former Confederate leaders until now, but now they're tearing down statues of Christopher Columbus. This is happening in a number of cities. The incredible explorer, who we would have said in the old days discovered the Americas. We don't use that word anymore, but Columbus was the explorer who brought the old world into contact with the new, a gigantic figure of history. His achievements echoed down the centuries in myriad ways. Tearing down a statue doesn't take away any of that. It just feeds ignorance and intolerance. Focusing on the odious treatment of Indigenous people and slaves in that era doesn't take away from the historic achievements. This sort of desperate moral posturing to elevate yourself by finding and exposing racism was presciently mocked on South Park years ago.
We almost got it, guys! Come on, throw the ropes, Dad! Good, that's good! Okay, hit the gas, Nelson! You got it, everybody! To hell with you, Columbus! Hello, is this, Howard Peterson? You live in Columbus, Ohio, is that correct? Yeah? You racist piece of You heard me. You're an intolerant pig. Oh, you're not? You just choose to live in a city named for ethnic cleansing? No, you. Rename your city. Hello? Okay, next one. Come on, get calling, Stan.
Dad, come on. We all get your point, but don't you think you're overdoing it?
You have to overdo it in today's society, Stan. You can't be nuanced and subtle anymore, else critics go, wow, what was the point of that? Hi, Francis Melman? Hey, how are you, you f***ing racist?
Art leading the way for reality, hey? Yep, pulling down statues is ugly and anti-intellectual. It's the worst kind of revisionism. It's the sort of year zero maliciousness of Pol Pot. It's like the cultural fascism of the Taliban. And it's being imposed on cities and campuses in liberal democracies. You can't change history. The challenge is to make history. If politicians and community leaders don't find the courage to stand up against this, to insist we understand our proud history, warts and all, they will only encourage ignorance and bigotry. The new wokeness, the new digital insistence of living in the moment is destroying our cultural heritage and our political engagement. Netflix has dropped Gone with the Wind because it reflects the racism of the time. It's as if they want all TV to be reality TV now. Even Australian comedian Chris Lilly has had stuff dropped because he, of course, pretended to be Polynesian. Yet, despite his blackface antics, Justin Trudeau remains Prime Minister of Canada. How about that? They're not coming for him yet. Go figure. This is why the culture wars matter, as I said. Modern green left extremists care not for history, context or institutions. Why have statues when you can post a selfie of yourself at a protest? This is the age of virtue signalling and gesture politics, when history is valued for nothing other than a series of props. We have to find ways for mainstream common sense to win out over this extremist nonsense.